Imagine that you're living in a time when kings feel threatened by the birth of a baby. You have dreams that aren't just ordinary, they're messages from angels. Suddenly, everything in your life transforms. This was the reality for Joseph, a carpenter, and his family. However, the narrative provides only a partial picture. He was more than just the man who stood beside Mary in the manger. He served as a guardian, a provider, and, above all, a man of profound faith, consistently guided by divine messages. We often imagine Mary receiving angelic visits, but Joseph also had his own encounters with these heavenly messengers. In the Bible, his story is very brief, in fact. We hear about him during Jesus' early years, like when he helps Mary give birth in a stable or when he leads his family to safety in Egypt. But after that, there is silence. He played an essential role in protecting Jesus during his most vulnerable years. When King Herod wanted to kill all the baby boys in Bethlehem, he did not hesitate. He led his family on a dangerous journey to Egypt to escape, relying entirely on faith and the guidance of dreams. His courage saved Jesus' life. Jesus never mentions him during his adult life. He vanishes as Jesus embarks on his ministry. No explanation, no goodbye. Nothing. He was the one who taught Jesus to work with his hands, to be patient, and to listen to God. In a way, Joseph helped shape the man who would later change the world. Yet his disappearance leaves a huge gap in the story. His life was defined by sacrifice that went unnoticed, unspoken, and yet played a pivotal role in shaping the life of the Son of God. His life took a dramatic turn when he learned that Mary, his fiancée, was expecting a child that was not his. Joseph faced an unimaginable dilemma in a society that viewed such situations with suspicion and judgment. He could have chosen to protect his own reputation by publicly divorcing Mary, which would have exposed her to shame and even danger. He chose to sacrifice his own status and comfort. He decided to marry Mary and accept her child as his own, knowing full well that others might misunderstand or judge him for doing so. This was not an easy decision. In that moment, he sacrificed his position in society, his peace of mind, and any plans he might have had for a simple and peaceful life. Joseph's life was not solely characterized by significant and dramatic sacrifices. He also made countless daily sacrifices, the ones that aren't as flashy but are just as important. As a carpenter, Joseph worked hard to provide for his family. The Bible doesn't tell us much about his daily life, but we can imagine that it was filled with long hours, hard work, and moments of fatigue. He was not just an ordinary man. He came from a royal lineage, one that was critical to the fulfillment of the prophecies about the Messiah. In the book of Isaiah 11:1, we read of a prophecy that foretold that the Messiah would come from the line of David. A shoot will spring up from the stump of Jesse. A branch will bear fruit from his roots. King David's father was Jesse, and prophets predicted that the Messiah would come from this family line. Joseph, as we learn in the Gospel of Matthew 1:16, was a direct descendant of David. Through Joseph's legal fatherhood, this lineage bestowed upon Jesus the foretold royal inheritance. Although Joseph was not Jesus' biological father, his role as the husband of Mary and protector of the family gave Jesus the royal credentials necessary to fulfill this prophecy. In Luke 2:15, Joseph takes Mary to Bethlehem for census. Caesar Augustus decreed in those days to conduct a census of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. Each man proceeded to his respective town for registration. Then Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and lineage of David. He traveled to Bethlehem to register his marriage to Mary, who had promised him a child. The death or disappearance of Joseph, Jesus' earthly father, remains one of the greatest mysteries of the New Testament. After playing a significant role in Jesus' early life, he suddenly disappears from the biblical narrative with no explicit mention of his death or final days. This silence has led to much speculation and various interpretations about what may have happened to him. The Bible last mentions him in Luke 2:41-52, when he and Mary encounter a young Jesus in the temple, instructing the religious leaders during the feast of Passover. At this point, Jesus is about 12 years old. Following this event, the Gospels cease to explicitly mention Joseph. When Jesus begins his public ministry, he is absent, leading many to conclude that he likely died before Jesus turned 30, when he began his mission. The Gospels make no mention of him during important events in Jesus' later life, such as the wedding at Cana, where only Mary is mentioned, or the crucifixion, where Jesus entrusts the care of his mother to the Apostle John, John 19:26-27. These absences strongly suggest that he had already passed away by that time, as it would have been highly unusual for a Jewish son not to care for his widowed mother at such important times. If Joseph had still been alive, he would have been present at the crucifixion to care for Mary, making it unnecessary for Jesus to entrust her to anyone else. Although the Bible does not provide details about his death, several theories and traditions have emerged over the centuries to fill in the gaps. 1. Death before Jesus' ministry. The most common belief is that Joseph died during the silent years of Jesus' life, somewhere between the time Jesus was 12 and when he began his ministry in his early 30s. The idea stems from the fact that Jesus never mentions Joseph in relation to his adult life or ministry. If Joseph had died during this time, it would explain his absence in the later gospel accounts. In ancient Jewish culture, men generally married young, and life expectancy was relatively short compared to modern times, largely due to disease and the lack of advanced medicine. This makes it plausible that he died when Jesus was still young. The Christian tradition often refers to him as the patron saint of a happy death. This title derives from the belief that he died in the presence of Jesus and Mary, surrounded by love and peace. Both the Catholic and Orthodox traditions have cherished this image of Joseph's death, despite Scripture not explicitly mentioning it. Since the Holy Family entrusted him with their care, his death is believed to have been a sacred and peaceful moment, fitting for a man of such deep faith and obedience. The idea that he died in the company of Mary and Jesus provides Christians with a model of a happy death, one that is peaceful, surrounded by loved ones, and spiritually fulfilled. They traveled from Galilee to their hometown of Nazareth, and the child grew and became strong. He was filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. He and Mary's journey to Bethlehem fulfilled another significant prophecy. In the Old Testament, Micah 5:2 predicted that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, from you will come forth to me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. At the time of Jesus' birth, Joseph and Mary lived in Nazareth, a town far from Bethlehem. But when the Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus ordered a census, he had to return to Bethlehem, the city of David, because of his ancestry. Luke 2:15 describes this census, which required everyone to travel to their ancestral towns for registration. As a descendant of David, he had no choice but to travel to Bethlehem with Mary, who was pregnant with Jesus. Bethlehem was about 70 miles from Nazareth, a long and treacherous journey, especially for a woman close to giving birth. In this ancient text, the priests seeking a suitable husband for Mary summoned all eligible men from the house of David, the royal line to which Joseph and Mary belonged. The priests asked each of these men to present a branch or staff as part of a ceremonial offering. The tradition recognized the man whose branch miraculously blossomed as God's chosen husband for Mary. This miraculous event was a divine sign indicating who was worthy of this important role. When Joseph's branch miraculously blossomed, it signified his divine election by God to take Mary as his wife. In Aaron's case, the blossoming rod indicated his selection as high priest from among the tribes of Israel, while in this case it symbolized his role as guardian of Jesus, the future high priest of humanity. The image of the blossoming branch is deeply symbolic. Not only does it link Joseph's divine appointment to his lineage from King David, but it also demonstrates that divine intervention, not human choice, bestows God's favor. Just as Aaron's rod blossomed to signify God's choice, his branch blossomed to signify his divinely ordained role in protecting Mary and the Messiah. This miraculous event demonstrates that God intricately planned his life, not relying on random circumstances. The story of God's selection of Joseph as Mary's husband, particularly the account of the miraculous blossoming of his staff, is a compelling depiction of how God intervenes in human affairs to accomplish his will. Other moments in biblical history where God used signs to indicate his chosen individuals bear significant parallels to this event. By examining additional prophecies and symbolic stories in the Bible, we can understand how God's selection of him aligns with a broader theme. God reveals his plans through miraculous signs, often involving nature, objects such as staffs and dreams. A striking parallel is the blossoming of Aaron's staff, as mentioned earlier in Numbers 17:8. In this story, God commanded each tribal leader of Israel to place his staff in the tabernacle. Aaron's staff, representing the tribe of Levi, was the only one that budded, blossomed, and produced almonds, indicating his divine appointment as high priest. This miracle served as a confirmation of God's choice, just as the blossoming of Joseph's branch was a divine confirmation of his role as protector of Mary and the coming Messiah. Both events used seemingly lifeless, natural objects to bring forth life as a symbol of divine approval and election. Aaron was chosen to serve as a priest, mediating between God and the people, while Joseph was chosen to protect and care for the one who would eventually become the high priest of all humanity. Both men's selection was based on their willingness to serve and obey God's will, not their worldly power or status. After King Herod's death, an angel again appeared to him in a dream, instructing him to return to Israel with his family. But when Joseph learned that Herod's son Archelaus was ruling in Judea, he was afraid to return there. Divine intervention guided him once again, and another dream warned him to take his family to Nazareth. Although the Old Testament does not directly contain this specific prophecy, it is believed to suggest that the Messiah originated from a lowly social status. Nazareth was a small, unimportant town in the Galilee region, and growing up there, Jesus assumed a humble, unassuming identity, far from the real expectations many had for the Messiah. Knowledge or foresight did not build his trust, nor did they provide him with a roadmap of what lay ahead. Instead, dreams, sudden events, and divine interventions revealed a path to him in bits and pieces. If this story about Joseph resonates with you, please consider showing your support by clicking the Super Thanks button. By contributing, you're not only helping us continue to create content that delves deeper into these meaningful stories. In the quiet and humble life of Saint Joseph, we find one of the greatest examples of trust and faithfulness in the Bible. His story inspires us to trust God in every situation, even when we don't understand. Not all heroes are those who seek fame or recognition. In fact, some of the most impactful lives are those lived with quiet dedication to a purpose greater than oneself. He lived his life in the shadow of something far greater than he could have imagined. He was not a king, a prophet, or a high priest, but he was a man of integrity who put his trust in God and acted according to divine guidance. This is a theme that runs throughout the Bible, the idea that God uses ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary things. 1 Corinthians 1:27 echoes this thought. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He didn't need worldly power to make a difference. Acts of kindness, love and faith, even those that go unnoticed by others, are the ones that resonate over time in ways we may never fully understand. Thanks for watching. Be part of our community by subscribing to our channel. Until the next video.